international law. And it can use it, actually, because if Iran plans to produce a nuclear submarine, which is on the table at the moment, then it would need such fuel. So the Iranians have not decided to do so, but what the Iranians are saying is that if the U.S. Congress tries to intimidate Iran, or tries to humiliate Iran, or tries to add new pieces to the negotiations, then the Iranians will do the same. So it would be a sort of tit for tat. On the other hand, if the United States behaves in a reasonable manner, if the U.S. Congress and the U.S. administration behaves like a reasonable and rational and civilized country when it comes to negotiating with Iran, then the progress can actually be made very rapidly at the negotiating table.
Well, I have to make a positive announcement. Our guest with us from Miami is finally joining us now, Director of the Middle East Forum, Daniel Pipes. Thank you very much for joining us here on the debate, Mr. Pipes. I don't know if you've been listening to the debate up until now, but we were discussing the issue of new sanctions being imposed on Iran. U.S. lawmakers discussing the issue of fresh restrictions as talks are underway on the nuclear deal that was reached in Geneva. Now, the question, Mr. Pipes, here is, why do you think there should be a discussion on new sanctions when these talks are underway and it looks like that the issue is moving toward a final resolution?
Well, thank you. I did hear much of the discussion, though I couldn't speak until now. The U.S. Congress, which reflects American opinion, is highly suspicious of the Islamic Republic of Iran, highly suspicious of its past record vis-a-vis the nuclear buildup, suspicious about its own treatment of its own people, suspicious of its engagement in terrorism, and so forth. And therefore, the Congress is saying, we would like to support the joint plan of action by making sure that it is, in fact, executed. And if it isn't, then there'll be more sanctions. But this is not more sanctions for now, it is for later, should the joint plan not, in fact, be executed. It is a way of strengthening the U.S. government's position. And it is a way of signaling the Iranian government that you better be serious about this, or there will be more sanctions to come. I think this is entirely legitimate. I think it's a good idea. I myself have great suspicions about the Iranian government. We can go on for hours why we Americans have these suspicions. They go right back to 1979, to the hostage seizure. We have real problems. And this small step to strengthen the JPA, the Joint Plan of Action, is, I think, a very necessary one.
Well, Mr. Pipes, I'm sure that the Iranians would also have the same argument, saying that they have their own reasons to distrust the United States. But just before we go on to our guest in Tehran, the existing sanctions have been affecting ordinary Iranians, as I'm sure you know, on a large scale. People with serious illnesses like cancer, they can't access medicines they need, the restrictions on airplane parts, oil exports even, they've been affecting people's lives. So do you think that rather than discussing fresh sanctions, at least at this point of time, when there is talk of some kind of rapprochement between these two sides, shouldn't the lawmakers or the government be reviewing the impact of the existing sanctions and discussing how they can protect the ordinary Iranians?
Of course, sanctions affect not just the government, but also ordinary Iranians. And that is a fact of life. But if the U.S. government and other governments are attempting, as they are, not to use force, but to use other forms of pressure, in particular economic pressure, then economic pressure is what Iranians will feel. Now, the choice before Iranians is, do you want to have economic pressure to urge you to stop the buildup of nuclear weapons, or would you rather have force used against you? And so far, the effort has been not to use force, but to use economic sanctions. There will be more if the agreement is not executed properly. And so far, it's been a month and a half since the agreement was reached on November 24th. The Iranian government has showed in many ways that it's not serious about this, that it is, in fact, seeing this as a joke, as
Yes.
not an agreement that it intends to fulfill. And therefore, it's all the more important that the U.S. and other governments show the Iranian government that this is not a joke. This must be dealt with seriously.
Okay, now I know, Mr. M.Marandi, you want to give a response to that, but just before we come to your response, I'd like to give our viewers a chance to take a look at some of our comments that have been posted on our Facebook page today. We'll be right back.
The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, controls the U.S. government, which is no longer an independent government and cannot make decisions of its own. It serves Zionism and corporations. This is due to AIPAC putting pressure on them. If they refuse to put these sanctions, Israeli lobbyists will destroy their re-elections and their characters in the media. Our foreign policy is controlled by Israel in the Middle East. Need more proof than this legislation? Iranians stood their ground and refused to be puppets to the US and its allies. Israel is also having nuclear weapons and yet has refused to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So the question is, why doesn't America sanction them?
Some of the comments posted on our Facebook page, and of course a lot of the comments regarded the role of Israel in this issue. Before I put that question to Daniel Pipes, Mr. M.Marandi, let's have your response to what Mr. Pipes was saying earlier. He said that the lawmakers are suspicious of Iran and that inevitably the sanctions are going to affect civilians, and the option of force should also be on the table because Iran looks like it's not taking the talks seriously.
Well, I find the statements somewhat humorous. To compare Iran and to create and the United States and to create some sort of moral equivalence is absurd. The United States is deeply, has been deeply involved in crimes against humanity, against ordinary Iranians, helping Saddam Hussein use and produce and use chemical weapons, and to try to hide the fact that Saddam Hussein actually did that. That is despicable. And no civilized regime would do such a thing. With regards to the U.S. hostages, I think he forgets that the whole takeover of the U.S. embassy was as a result of the U.S. coup d'etat in Iran, the overthrow of the Iranian national government, and the subjugation and the oppression of the Iranian people by the United States and the Shah of Iran for decades. And the fact that the United States supported the Shah during the final months and helped and allowed the Shah to continue to oppress ordinary Iranians. And then the United States gave the Shah passage into their country, a mass murderer who was demanded by the whose return was demanded by the Iranian people and the Iranian government. So there's no moral equivalent between the two. And of course, the United States government, if we want to look more recently at its behavior, I mean, if we're talking about trust, the U.S. Congress hopefully does not represent public opinion in the United States, although public opinion is controlled by the corporate media. But the United States government, during the war against Saddam, supported Saddam Hussein, then attacked Iraq when it invaded Kuwait. When the Iraqis were withdrawing from Kuwait, on the Kuwait-Basra highway, they slaughtered tens of thousands of Iraqis.
Mr. M.Marandi, I'm really sorry for stopping you.
I want to finish here. Just one moment. They slaughtered tens of thousands of Iraqis who were leaving, and this was against the third Geneva Convention. If we want to talk about American abuses of human rights, the list is
yes.
extraordinary. So I don't think the United States or your guest is in any position to talk about human rights
yes.
and trust.
Well, Daniel Pipes, if you could quickly tell us, we are short in time, your response to the comments there, and also those comments on our Facebook page. Do you think that Israel is leading the discussions in Congress and the decisions that are being made, and does this show that the Obama administration is quite weak in regards to its decisions about Iran?
Well, first about the Facebook page. The Facebook page writers have it wrong. It's not about AIPAC. That AIPAC is an American institution. It's about Israel. Israel itself, the government of Israel has said it is against this joint plan of action, and has said it will not abide by it.
Can strategists and American politicians pay very close attention to what the Israeli government says. So when the Israeli government came out against this, yes, that affected a lot of people's thinking. Had the Israeli government been enthusiastic for it, I think the opposition in Congress would have been much less. But it's not about AIPAC. It's not about a lobbyist. It's about the Israeli government itself that came out against it. As for the whole question of America's role in the world, and human rights and so forth, that isn't the issue here. We can go on about that at great length. I would simply say the United States has been a great boon to human rights, to the rule of law, to prosperity for a good century now. And anyone who disagrees with that doesn't understand modern history. But let's not argue about that. Let's talk about the current issue, which is whether the government of Iran is building nuclear weapons or not. And I think the evidence is obvious that if the government of Iran were interested only in nuclear power, it would not be building the fissile materials and have the reactors that it has.
I'm afraid I've got to stop you. I am really sorry. We've run out of time. Daniel Pipes, Director of the Middle East Forum, with us there live from Miami. And a big thank you to Professor of the University of Tehran, Mr. M.Marandi, who was with us live from the Iranian capital. Thank you so much for staying with us here on The Debate. From me, Homa Lezgi. Until our next programme, it's goodbye.